Hi, and welcome to this video, actually part 2 to the origin story of a lifestyle entrepreneur, aka how do you become an entrepreneur and ultimately find ways to make money doing what you love, sort of peeling back the curtain and sharing with you my own personal backstory and some of the key decisions that I made that led me into a life of entrepreneurship, hopefully to inspire and connect with you and share with you some of the ways that you can take similar steps in your life and career. So I'm Harsh Krieger, author of Lifestyle Entrepreneur, founder and publisher now of Lifestyle Entrepreneurs Press, and jumping back into where we left off in the last video, it just signed the paperwork and incorporated my very first company, which was Tabula Rasa Records, which really means blank slate in Latin, and at age 21 had founded that as a result of years of being in bands, playing music, producing and working with other artists and musicians, and ultimately needing some kind of a structure to support our own band's ambitions is to have a career in music. And so, there I was, age 21, living in Nashville, Tennessee. We had a home studio on Music Row next to all the different publishing houses and record labels, and just in it all day long, 10, 12, 14 hours a day, writing, rehearsing, playing out, working with other artists, and now making the decision to actually build some structure and have the business side of our band's career handled. And so what did that actually look like? Well, sure, it was one thing. It was a milestone to sign the paperwork and incorporate a company, but that only takes an hour or two. The actual process and the mindset I was in was that, look, I don't know that much about business. I'd never really been interested in business per se, but I knew that if I could get people around me and around us that could support us and that were sort of specialized and had their own roles, that would allow us, myself and my bandmates, to focus on music and the creative aspect, which we really loved. And so I remember going back home to San Francisco, I think it was age 21 or 22, had incorporated this and started to gather a few informal mentors, a few advisors, friends of the family, other people that had entrepreneurial and coaching and consulting experience to sort of advise and that I could ping questions off of whenever I didn't know, what to do in a specific area of our business. So I came home for New Year's Eve and the holidays, but as I was visiting my parents, in the back of my mind, I knew that I had a meeting with a potential investor on January 1st. And I was pretty nervous, but going into this meeting with a leather jacket and sort of longer hair, sort of looking like and feeling like a musician, and went to visit a pretty successful person in a large house, and it was pretty intimidating. But when I was just about to knock on the door, I said, look, would I rather be nervous now and possibly raise some money that can help us achieve our band's career goals, or am I just going to walk away and not do it? So knocked on the door, went in, very nice gentleman, and had a little bit of small talk, and then told him the plan that we had to record our own album, release it, tour the country, promote ourselves, and really just, laid it on as thick as I could, and passionately and earnestly. And ultimately walked out of there with a handshake and later a signed contract and check for $25,000. And I felt on top of the world. I couldn't wait to get back home and tell my bandmates the news. Now we could, produce music to a better quality. We could hire a manager to start to oversee our day-to-day affairs, get a booking agent so that we could do more shows, and ultimately leverage that first investment to raise just over $100,000 across 7 different people. And that's what allowed us to executive produce our album and hire a manager instead of sign away a lot of rights, sign away a lot in order to just have that relationship without paying. And so I quickly saw that, business was both interesting and creative in its own right, and also a whole lot of work and a huge learning curve. And so in the midst of recording, writing, rehearsing for shows, playing out, doing promotion, I was also learning about finance and management and how to coordinate people's efforts, and largely doing this on my own because the agreement I had with my bandmates was that if we went down this path of forming our own record label, that I'd be the sole person in charge of the business side. which ultimately meant just a lot of stress and a lot of effort and work. But ultimately, by chipping away at it, day after day, week after week, month after month, started to see some results. Whereas now we had recorded our album and released it, got distribution in stores through a subsidiary of Sony Records, and had a booking agent, and we were touring around and playing shows in, I think, 10 or 12 different states, and ultimately had a radio promotions and TV promotions, and had our music on hundreds of radio stations, and I think 9 songs on MTV synced up with different shows, and started to see that it was actually possible to have our own business being a band. And when I drew that connection, that business or entrepreneurship can be a creative art form in and of itself, that's when I really think that I became hooked. And quite frankly, have now been an entrepreneur for the vast majority, if not all, of my adult life. And so leading up to the point where, sort of stair-stepped out of music and into the subsequent ventures and businesses I've started and projects I've undertaken, was this 3-year span of just focusing 100% on the band and the record label that we had created to administer our band's affairs. And there's something valuable in that, in the sense that having 100% focus on one really key goal allowed us to get a lot of results in a shorter time than if we were dipping our toes in 2 or 3 different projects and only allocating a certain amount of time to the band and the business. And so as it turned out, we ended up having, in 2005 was really the banner year. It was the culmination of years of work. Our album was released, we had songs on the radio, we were touring around, ultimately had the #1 independent rock song in America in August of 2005. And I've really felt and embodied, wow, all that work, all that effort has kind of started to pay off. We've materialized the vision that we had for ourselves as a band, and it just took a lot of work and willingness to take on some risk to achieve it. Even at that time, even when we were playing a showcase in Los Angeles and had music on the radio, in the back of my mind, I couldn't see myself doing this when I was 40. I couldn't see myself doing this forever. And that was the first time that the question arose of, well, what else would I do? I mean, my whole life, essentially, since 13 or 14 at that time, had been solely focused, entirely oriented around music. But now I had this question in my mind of, what's next? What else would I do? And that's ultimately what led me down the path to founding or co-founding 5, 6 different companies, working on a variety of projects, traveling and studying language. Grew out of these early experiences of focus, taking risk, and being willing to go after our dream in music, in business, in life, and accomplishing enough to have that identity reflected back to me, reflected back to us, as people said, oh, I heard your music on the radio the other day, or I saw your guys' show in this city or that city, and getting that objective sort of validation for all the work that we put in started to form one of the first concepts that I talk about in my book, Lifestyle Entrepreneur, which is this concept of identity. And I use the band as one example in the book. I encourage you to check out Lifestyle Entrepreneur if you haven't already and see a little bit more of this story, but really the culmination of the strategies and the models and frameworks I developed over the subsequent 10 years of starting businesses and becoming involved in different creative and business projects. So I hope this peek behind the scenes of, sort of my origin story, as it were, of becoming a lifestyle entrepreneur is helpful, inspires you, and motivates you to take action on your journey to becoming a lifestyle entrepreneur. I'll talk to you soon. I hope this was helpful, and to your success.